Hello, everybody. I'm still setting up. So I'm just organizing my board here. So, but while I do that, you guys can just hang out. Just remember during the class, try to participate as much as possible. And, like I said in the text, that'll make for a better class. I'm getting an echo on here, so I got to try to figure out this echo. That's not going to work. Why am I getting an echo? Close this. Stuff on.
How you get that? Mm-hmm.
Oh, somebody else is in here. Okay. Am I ready? So let's probably close the store. Okay. All right. So, start the class. I don't know if anybody had a chance to download this form that I have on the screen. If not, it's not a big deal because I have it up on the screen. But I'm going to use this paper, which you see here, as a guide for the class. So if you look at it, it says New York State Department of Motor Vehicles Road Test Evaluation. So if you're unfamiliar with this paper, this form right here, this is an exact duplicate of the things that they'll be testing you on the New York State road test. Nowadays, so this is basically like your test paper for your not for your 5-hour class, for your road test. So you can think of this, after you finish your road test, sometimes they may give you a paper that looks exactly like this. All right. Nowadays, what they do though is they use a tablet, and they conduct the whole test on the tablet, and they no longer print you out your results. So actually, they probably would not give you this after the end of your test, but they may use this paper if their tablet is not working. So when their tablet is not working, they'll go back to using this paper. All right. What they do at the end of the test, they no longer give you the results of your test. So like if you see on this paper, you see a little box here where it says total points. That will basically be your results of your road test. So they no longer give you this paper anymore. They no longer give you a receipt version of this, because they used to give a receipt version of this that they would print out on the spot. Nowadays, what they do now is you get your results right away. They give you a card that has a DMV website on it. I'll see. Dang, I should copy this. Let me see which camera. So I don't know if you can see that. Can you see that? Showing up kind of small. Anyway, they give you a card like this. I don't know if you can see it in the picture here. And what you do is it tells you to go to this website after 6 p.m. the day of your road test, and then you can find out your results that way. All right. So basically, you won't know if you pass or fail the road test until 6 p.m. Well, you won't know for sure. You probably have a good idea email or not, but you won't get your actual results until 6 p.m. So you will go to that website. I need to make a copy of that so I can have it on the screen. So anyway, when you get your results, you will see, if you made mistakes, you will see some of these things that I have on this paper listed on the screen when you check your results. So if you look at this paper, you could think of it as a list of mistakes. All right. So when you take your road test, the DMV will be asking you to do certain things, and they'll be looking to see if you make certain mistakes. That's basically what this paper is. This paper is a list of the typical mistakes that people make on the New York State road test. So if you look at it, they'll be testing you on different things, different categories of things. So if you see there's 5 different categories here. A is the types of mistakes that you might make when you're leaving a curve. B are the types of mistakes that you might make when you're making your turns or you're at your intersections. C are the types of mistakes that you might make when you're parallel parking or doing a 3-point turn. D is the types of mistakes that you might make when you're driving in traffic, and E are the types of mistakes that you might make with your vehicle control. All right, and I'll try to hit all of these different categories as we do the class, so that way you can have an idea of what types of mistakes you're making. And somebody has a little bit of noise in the background. Maybe you can, when you're not talking, maybe you can mute it if you have noise in the background. I don't know who it is. They're like papers or shuffling around. What is that? Okay. All right. Okay. So again, like I was saying, this paper is a list of mistakes. The DMV will be asking you to do certain things, and they'll be looking to see if you make certain mistakes. If you look at this paper, you see that each one of these mistakes that's listed on this paper has a point value associated with it, anywhere from 5 points up to 15 points. And then at the bottom here, you'll see a box here that says total points. Now, when you receive your total points, at the end of your test, is it the higher the points, the better, or the lower the points, the better? And you can unmute yourself if you are going to answer. When you
lower the points?
Right, so it's the lower the points, the better. Okay, so it's the lower the points, the better. So if that's the case, what is the best score on the road test? What is the best score on the road test? If you get a 100, is that a good score?
No.
No.
No. So if it's the lower the better and 100 is not a good score, what is the best score?
0.
0.
Right, a 0. All right, so a 0 is the best score. If you get a 0, that means basically you made no mistakes on a road test. Do you have to get a 0 in order to pass the test?
No.
No.
No, you do not have to get a 0 in order to pass the test, which means you can make some mistakes and still pass the test. The question is, how many mistakes can you make? What is the maximum amount of points you can accumulate and still pass the test? If you don't have the paper, if you look down here,
30.
at the bottom where it says meet standards for licensing, reasons for disqualification, you see the very last line says what?
More than 30 points.
more than 30 points, all right? So the basic way of failing the road test is to accumulate more than 30, all right? So, so the basic way of failing the road test is to accumulate more than 30, which means that if you get 30 or less, what happened?
You passed.
You pass.
You pass. All right. Is there a difference between somebody that gets 0 points and somebody that gets exactly 30 points? Is there a difference between those two people?
No.
No, they both gonna pass.
Can a person that got a 0 brag to the person that got a 30 that they did better?
Not really. They both will be able to get their license. The only thing is that one make fewer mistakes than the other.
If you and your friend were both taking the test, you got a 0 and they got a 30, would you brag?
No.
All right, so you can brag if you want to, but it probably, the person that got a 30 wouldn't really care because what happened to them too?
They passed.
They passed. So getting a 0 is a perfect score, so that is bragging rights. But ultimately, it doesn't really mean anything in terms of your license. A person that got a 0, their license is just as good as somebody that gets a 30. All right. Is there a difference between somebody that gets a 35 and somebody that gets a 105? Is there a difference between a 35 and a 105?
No.
No, they both fail.
No.
Can a person that got a 35 brag to somebody that got a 105 that they did better?
No.
No, because what happened to both of them?
They failed.
They both failed the test. All right. Do you think somebody that got a 105 did worse than somebody that get a 35?
Yes.
Definitely.
Do you think that who made more mistakes, you think?
With the 105.
The 105? Possibly, most likely, yes, but it doesn't always work out that way. And I don't know if I'll go into it now, but I will go into it later on in the class. And the reason why that might not be the case is that when you make a mistake a lot of times on a road test, some mistakes will be just the point value that's associated with it, like you see on this paper. It'll just be either a 5-point mistake or a 10-point mistake or a 15-point mistake. But there's some mistakes on the road test that when you make them, the examiner will associate other mistakes that are related to the main mistake that you made. So for example, let me just give you an example. What's an example? Oh, let me see, what do I have here? Can I do it right here? Maybe I can do it right here. All right, so let's say you were taking a test and, oh no, not that. Okay, let's say you are making a right turn and you're taking your test. Is this the example I want to give? Okay. Let's say you're making a right turn and you're taking the test. You're turning on a one-way road. Let's say it has 2 lanes of traffic, but it's not divided into 2 lanes. So there's no lines in the middle of the 2 lanes. All right, so you're getting ready to make a right turn. You're taking your road test. You're turning onto a one-way road. It's wide enough for 2 lanes of traffic. does it matter which lane you turn into?
You should turn all the way into the right one, right?
Okay, move this over. Okay, so which lane would that be in terms of the diagram, if you can see it, lane 1 or lane 2?
Lane
Lane
1.
one.
Lane 1.
Okay, lane 1. Now, would it be a mistake to turn into lane 2?
Yes.
No.
Okay, a big mistake or a small mistake?
A small mistake.
Okay, now let's look at this paper. Let me scroll back up. Okay, so you made if you went into the outer lane, well, what is the rule? Let me step back for a little bit. What is the rule in terms of making a turn, in terms of lane selection? Is there a rule in terms of that determines what lane you're supposed to turn into? Or is there no rule? Or you turn into whatever lane is open? Anybody know what the rule is? There is a rule that determines which lane you're supposed to turn into. Anybody know? All right.
The
Whenever
lane
you
that is close, sorry.
okay. All right, good. The lane that is closest to you. All right. So you always turn into the closest lane. So that means if you're making a right turn, you're going to turn into which lane? The left or the right?
Right.
The right.
The
Right. If you're making a left turn, you're going to turn into which lane?
The left.
The left lane.
Left
All right.
lane.
Now, with left turns, it could be a little bit tricky because before you determine which is the leftmost lane, you need to determine whether you're turning onto a one-way street or a two-way street. All right. And that will determine which lane you turn into. So I'll try to just go over that. So anyway, going back to the example I gave earlier, this one. If the rule is that you're supposed to turn into the closest lane, and lane 1 is the closest lane for this right turn, if you turn into lane 2, what kind of turn would that be considered? A short turn or a wide turn?
A wide turn.
Wide turn.
All right, so that would be considered a wide turn, all right? How many points off for a wide right turn? And look at section B.
5.
5, okay. 5 points off for a wide right turn. Is there anything else in section B that you think the examiner could take off points for that's related to that wide right turn?
Poor judgment.
Okay, number 4, poor judgment approaching or at intersections. And they would check off which one of these things?
Turning.
Turning. All right, so that would add an additional how many points?
10.
10. All right. Anything else in section B that they could possibly take off points for?
Signals.
Speed.
Where was that? Number 8 or number 4 again? Number 8. Let me see. Signals. Probably not. When you say signals, you mean like a traffic signal?
Yeah, like if you're turning.
Only if there was a signal that was telling you which lane to turn into, and you turned into the wrong lane. So probably not number 8. Now, what I would say here is if there were lane markings. So I told you that there were no lane markings. But if there were lane markings here, say like there was a lane marking in between say like there was a dotted line between lanes 1 and lane 2, and you turn it to lane 2, then the examiner could also take off for number 8, inattentive to traffic lane markings. All right, but let's say that's not the case here. Let's say we don't have any lane markings. So let's say they would take off for number 4 and number 6, a wide right turn. Now, let's go. Now, we're also at a okay, oh, move that again. All right, so when you're making a right turn, you're in traffic, all right? So let's look at section D. So section B, we already know we've accumulated 15 points. Let's go over to section D. Is there anything that you see in section D that the examiner could take off points for? So remember, we were supposed to turn into the right lane, and the mistake that we made was we made a wide turn and we turned into which lane? The left. Anything, do you see anything in section D that the examiner could also take off points for?
Fail to keep right, 15.
Failed to keep right. So that means we're at an additional 10 points. Huh? And what else? Anything else you see here in section D?
16, improper lane of traffic.
Improper
20.
lane of traffic. So, how many points have we accumulated so far?
35.
We have poor judgment, number 4, that's 10 points. We have number 6, which is a wide right turn. That's 15. We have 15, fails to keep right, we're at 25. And number 16, improper lane of traffic, puts us at what?
35.
35 points. Anything else in this paper in this section D that you think they can take off points for?
20.
20 is fails to yield the right of way. So probably not that unless it was actually somebody you failed to yield the right of way to. But it could be number 21.
Poor judgment.
Yeah.
Poor judgment in traffic. Could it also be either number 23 or number 24?
Definitely 24.
Okay, so you got number 24, 10 points, number 21, 10 points, number 16, 10 points, number 15, 10 points, number 6, 5 points, and number 4, 10 points. How many points is that?
45.
A lot. It might even be more than 45. How many mistakes did you make here?
1.
You made 1.
1. Yep.
You made 1 wide right turn. All right. If the turn that you made was slightly wide, then maybe they just take off the 5 points. But when it's so wide, when you get into a completely different lane, then the examiner a lot of times will take off for all of those points that I just described. All right. And this could be your first turn that you make on your road test. If that's the first turn you made on your road test, what just happened?
Failed.
That's a fail. All right. So, couple of ways. There's a couple of ways you can accumulate points and fail the road test. The main way of failing the road test is to accumulate more than 30 points. The tricky part about the road test is that there's several ways you can accumulate points. So one of them would be simply just making different mistakes, too many different mistakes. So what I was talking about earlier, who made more mistakes? Somebody that got a 35 or somebody that got a 105? Somebody that got a 35, do you think they made, is it likely that they made a lot of little mistakes or they made one big mistake like the one I'm describing right now?
Probably one mistake.
Well, typically when somebody that fails with a 35, they usually made a lot of little mistakes. Failed the signal here, didn't look over the shoulder there, not using the mirror. They made a lot of little mistakes. Somebody that fails with say like a 75 or 105 or whatever, they probably made 2 or 3 big mistakes. And maybe a couple little small ones here. They probably made 2 big mistakes and a couple little small mistakes along the way. So in a sense, sometimes the 35 person, the person that got a 35, they made a lot of little baby mistakes, nothing major. They probably did the road test, most of the road tests fairly well. They just had a lot of little mistakes along the way. The person that a lot of times that got a 75 or higher, they probably made 1 or 2 really big mistakes that messed them up, that failed them. All right, so you can fail as a result of, I don't know if I already wrote that somewhere here. Let me just do it on this. I feel like I wrote this somewhere. Let me see if I wrote it somewhere else. I don't have to write it again. I don't see it. All right, I'll just put it up here. Okay, so different ways you can fail the road test. So the main way is accumulate more than 30 points. Another way is by how should I say it? Making compound mistakes. Sounds real technical. Making, let me just say it simple, making mistakes that can be associated and that's what I was just described to you. When you make a mistake and that mistake can be associated with several other mistakes. All right. So that means one mistake can sometimes turn into 3 or 4. All right. Another way you could fail is by making repeated mistakes, making the same mistake over and over and over again. So I'll try to go over that too. Also, if you look at this paper, if you look at this paper, is there any one mistake in this 1 through 31 that can fail you automatically? Just by making that one mistake by itself. Can any one mistake in the 1 through 31 by itself fail you automatically? Anything?
No.
Okay. There's actually are mistakes in this 1 through 31 that could fail you automatically just from the one mistake. It doesn't look like it because you don't see any one mistake in here worth over what? No mistake in this 1 through 31 is more than how many points?
30.
15.
All right, so no mistake is in here is over 15 points, and you know that you have to accumulate more than 30 in order to fail. So how is it that one of these mistakes alone could fail you? And the reason is this, I'll give you an example. When you took your learner's permit test, how many questions were on your learner's permit test? Do you remember?
I think 50.
50? All right, some people took a 50 question test. If you took your test before the pandemic, it was probably like a 20 question test. Let's say, let me see. Let's say it was a 20 question test. When you took that learner's permit test, are all the mistakes, all the questions, were they worth the same, equally worth the same amount? Or are some of the questions on the permit test worth more than the other questions?
I think they was all the same amount.
All the same amount? There's actually some of the questions on the learner's permit test are worth more than some of the others. So they hold more weight. So for example, on a 20 question test, for example, let's say if each question will be worth 5 points. So that means technically you could probably get about 6 wrong on a 20 question test. But there are a certain type of questions on the learner's permit test that if you get the one, not one, but if you get 2 of those wrong, it's a fail, even if you got everything else correct. What type of questions do you think those are? What questions do you think hold more weight on the learner's permit test? Anybody? The science and the alcohol questions hold more weight on the learner's permit test. So on a 20 question test, if you got 1 sign wrong and 1 alcohol question wrong, but you got everything else correct, it is possible that you could fail the test. All right. On a 50 question test, it's going to be a little bit different because there's more questions on it. So they may give you a little bit more leeway with that. But on the learner's permit test, there are questions that hold more weight. The same logic applies to the road test. There are mistakes in this 1 through 31 that hold more weight than the point value that you see associated with it on this paper. All right. If you look at the paper again, don't just look at the points, but look at it in terms of what mistakes do you think on this paper could fail you automatically? Don't look at the points. The points could give you a clue as to what mistakes could fail you automatically, but it may be better not to look at them. Anything?
Vehicle control.
Vehicle control? Okay.
Yeah.
Vehicle control is, I would say any the categories itself. So leaving curb, turns and intersections, parking, driving in traffic, vehicle control, the categories itself are important, but the actual mistake, like what number mistake on this paper. Now, when you say vehicle control, are you talking about that whole section, or are you talking about a particular mistake in that section?
Poor steering control.
Okay,
Delay.
that's one of, say that again.
Delayed braking and abrupt braking.
Okay, now, delayed, poor steering control.
Mhm.
Poor steering control is how many points?
15.
15. Would you say that's a major mistake, a big mistake, I should say?
I would say because they also have violations in other sections of this. So if you turn in or you ain't driving straight or you doing the maneuvers, you could get violated for these other sections too.
Okay, that could happen, but it could also be that you have poor steering control on your turns, but not on your straight driving or your maneuvers. But let's say your straight driving is good and your maneuvers are good, but you have poor steering control on your turns. If somebody has poor steering control on their turns, should that person be allowed to pass the road test?
No.
Probably
No.
not.
You could have an accident to cause an accident.
Right. Anything else? Do you see anything else on this paper that could be an automatic fail? How about in this section here, parking, backing, and U-turns? Anything in that section you think could fail you automatically? How about number 11? Unable to park properly. If you're unable to park properly on a road test, could that fail you?
It says only 15 though, but I don't know.
Well, poor steering control also said only 15.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you this. Is parallel parking part of the road test, an important part of the road test?
Yes.
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 If somebody does not show that they can parallel park properly on a road test, should they be allowed to pass?
No.
Probably not. How about a 3-point turn? Is that an important part of driving, being able to make a 3-point turn?
I don't think so, but it might be.
All right, it could be debatable, but there are certain things that the DMV deems important to test you on, and they deem it important that you know how to do. So I'm gonna go over that. There's 4 basic things that they deem it important that you know how to do. One of them is parallel parking, another one is 3-point turn, and the other 2 are left turns and right turns. All right, so the mistakes that we just described here, number 11, number 12, and number 27, what do they all have? What do those 3 things have in common? Number 11, number 12, and number 27. What do those 3 things have in common?
They're all 15.
They're all 15 points. How many things do you see all together that are 15 points on this paper, on this document?
6.
6. Number 11, unable to park properly. Number 12, unable to make a 3-point turn. Number 18, speed excessive for conditions. Number 19, too slow impede traffic flow. Number 20, fails to yield the right of way. And number 27, poor steering control. All right, those 15-point mistakes, those are the things that I was talking about that could fail you automatically on a road test. So those are major mistakes. All right. There are other mistakes that could fail you automatically on a road test that are not specifically listed on this paper. And they will fall under the categories here where it says reasons for disqualification. So any type of mistake that you could think of that could fall under these categories here, accident, serious violation, dangerous action, those are all types of mistakes that could fail you automatically. Now, this is a vague thing. What is a dangerous action? What is a serious violation? What is considered an accident on a road test? You know, anytime you hit anything, touch anything, even if it was just, you know, like a scratch or you barely touched it, that could be considered an accident. Cannot touch or hit anything, any other object or whatever on a road test. That is most likely a fail. Dangerous action is pretty much how it sounds. I could give you an example, some examples of dangerous actions. But a dangerous action is anything you do on a road test that the examiner felt was potentially dangerous. A serious violation is you could think of those types of mistakes as mistakes that you would make, that might make, or that you see people make in real life situations where they could get a moving violation for. So there's two types of violations you could get from the police department. One is a parking violation for parking incorrectly or in the wrong place or at the wrong time. And then you have moving violations, which are going to be things like driving over the speed limit, not stopping at the stop sign, various things like that. So serious violations on the road test are going to be more like moving violations in a real life situation. All right. So going back to this little list here. All right, so different ways you can fail the test: accumulate more than 30 points, making mistakes that can be associated with other mistakes, making repeated mistakes, any mistake that's 15 points. And then you have mistakes that fall under those categories at the bottom. Accident, serious violation, dangerous action. All right. Can you fail the road test with less than 30 points?
No.
Can you fail the road test with less than 30 points? All right, let's look at that, look at the paper again. That line that talked about the 30 points, what else did it say? Well, let me ask you this. That line that talks about failing for more than 30 points, what is the most important phrase in that sentence? That whole sentence says additional training needed and or more than 30 points. What is the most important phrase in that whole sentence? It's the
Additional
phrase,
training needed?
partially, it's the phrase and or. And why is that? Why, when you have a sentence and it has the phrase in it and or, what is that telling you about the sentence?
It could be both.
Right, it's telling you that either only one part of the sentence has to be true or both could be true. So, and that's what it's saying here. Like if it only said additional training needed and more than 30 points, that means both of these things would have to be true in order for you to fail. When it says or, that means that only one of these things has to be true. So that means that the examiner can simply fail you if they feel you need additional training, all right? And that means that they don't necessarily have to fail you, or you don't necessarily have to accumulate more than 30 points to fail. Why? Because it says more than 30 points or additional training needed. All right. Now, what is additional training needed? That could be kind of vague. All right. And that's the tricky part of the road test, is this section here, which says reasons for disqualification, because there's a lot of things that you could do that could be considered an accident. There's a lot of things that you could do that could be considered a serious violation. And there's a lot of things that you could do that could be considered a dangerous action. I mean, like what is considered dangerous? For you, something that might be considered dangerous might not be the same thing as what an examiner might consider dangerous. What does it mean to mean additional training? What does that mean exactly? All right, so those things are kind of subjective, and they're based on the opinion of the examiner that you get. The tricky part about the road test is that every examiner is going to be a little bit different in how they judge things, just like how people are. Everybody's different. So something that requires additional training for you might not be the same for somebody else. So that is the tricky part about the road test, is knowing what the examiners expect of you. All right, and how to do something, what to do, and how to do it. All right, so that is the tricky part, probably the trickiest part about the road test. All right, so and then going back to another thing that I listed here is repeated mistakes. So repeated mistakes can fail you automatically. I mean, not automatically, but they can fail you. All right, can you fail for a 5-point mistake? And that's the only mistake that you made on the whole road test?
No.
All right, let's pick out a 5-point mistake. What's a 5-point mistake here? Let's pick out one, just one.
Fails the signal.
Fails the signal. All right. Let's say, let's say, how many times do you need to signal on a road test? A lot or not that many?
A lot.
A lot.
A lot. So when you first pull out, do you have to signal?
Yes.
All right, let's say you don't. When you making a right turn, do you have to signal?
Yes.
Let's say you don't. When you're pulling over to parallel park, do you have to signal?
Yes.
Yes.
When you finish parallel park, you got to pull out of that spot. Do you have to signal?
Yes.
Yes.
Do you have to signal when you're about to do a 3-point turn?
Yes.
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 What if you never signal throughout the whole road test, and that's the only mistake that you made?
You fail.
That's a fail.
You fail.
That's a fail.
That's a fail.
All right. So repeated mistakes can fail you automatically. I mean, not automatically, but the examiner sees that as something you need additional training with. All right. So, it'll go down as a serious violation, because in a real life scenario, if you don't signal, can you get a ticket?
Yes.
Yes. So in a real life scenario, you don't see it a lot, But if in a real life driving scenario, if you don't signal in certain situations, you can get a ticket. Cops don't normally give tickets for that, especially in, you know, in the boroughs like Brooklyn and, you know, boroughs that are more residential. They don't tend to give tickets for that, but they could. All right.
Yes, teacher.
Okay, so can you fail with less than 30 points? Yes. So if the examiner feels you need additional training, you can fail with less than 30 points. Can a 5-point mistake fail you? The answer is yes, if it's a repeated mistake. Something that a mistake that you keep making over and over and over again. Other things, other ways you can fail the test, what I spoke about earlier. When you're taking a road test, they're gonna be looking to see, they're gonna ask you to do certain things, and they'll be looking to see if you make certain mistakes. So I've talked a lot about the mistakes so far. So let's talk about the things that they're going to actually ask you to do. So there's 4 basic things. So what are the 4 basic things that they're gonna ask you to do on a road test? So I talked about it earlier. What are those 4 basic things?
Parallel park.
So parallel parking, what else?
Right, right
Point.
and left turns.
How many times will they ask you to make a parallel park on a road test?
Probably 2.
1.
Parallel park, you only have to parallel park once. How many times will they ask you to do a 3-point turn? Just once. And how many left turns and right turns each will they ask you to do you think?
2 to 4.
Right, 2 to 4. So I have that here. So these are the 4 basic things they're going to ask you to do on the New York State road test. Parallel parking, left turns and right turns, and broken U-turns. What's another name for a broken U-turn?
3-point turn.
3-point turn.
3-point turn. If you're taking a road test and the examiner asks you to do a K-turn, what are they asking you to do?
A broken U-turn.
A broken U-turn. How many people here already knew that? Okay, now that is important because it's important to know that these different terms, because the examiner may ask you to do it and they may not explain to you what it is. Once you start the road test, the examiner, they are limited in what they can explain to you. They should not feel as if they have to explain to you how to do something. When you take the road test, they're simply going to tell you, make a left, make a right, park here, do a 3-point turn, and that's pretty much it. You know, how to do something, they should not have to explain to you how to do it. If they feel like they have to explain to you how to do something, then that means you do not know how to do it, which means that you need additional what? You need additional training.
Additional training.
Right. So I bring that up also because I've seen this thing called a K-turn which is the same thing as a 3-point turn. I've seen that cause people to fail because they did not know that a K-turn was the same thing as a 3-point turn. And they knew how to do a 3-point turn. They knew how to do a broken U-turn. They just didn't know that a K-turn was the same thing. And they either did not know enough to ask the examiner, okay, what is that? What is the K-turn? Or they even may have asked the examiner, what is a K-turn? And the examiner did not explain to them that a K-turn is the same thing as a 3-point turn. All right, so that's something that's that could be a little bit tricky. I don't know that the examiners intentionally do something like that to trick somebody. It just may be the way that they're used to referring to it. All right. But luckily that's the only thing I could think of that goes by several different names, of which some of them you may not have heard. But these are the 3 most common ways somebody would refer to the broken U-turn: as a broken U-turn, a 3-point turn, or a K-turn. All right, so this is your entire test: 1 parallel park, 1 broken U-turn, a couple of left turns, and a couple of right turns. And the examiner may not ask you to do much of anything else. All right, this is your entire test. How long do you think the average road test is? How long
10
is the
minutes.
average road test? How many?
10.
10. Anybody else?
Says 8.
Okay, sorry. I tried to hide it. Yeah, so the average road test is about 8 minutes. All right. Is that a long time that they're keeping you out there?
No.
No, it's not really a long time that they're keeping you out there. And these things that they're asking you to do: 1 parallel park, 1 broken U-turn, 2 to 3 left turns, and 2 or 3 right turns. Does that sound like a lot?
No.
No.
No, so the test is not that long, and they're not asking you to do a whole lot. Are those good things or bad? Good or bad?
Good.
Test is not that long, and they're not asking you to do a whole lot. Good or bad?
That's good. I say it's good.
Good? Okay.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
That's
All
good.
right. It's both. It's both good and bad. It's good that the test is short and they're not asking you to do a whole lot, because that means there's less of an opportunity for you to make what?
Mistakes.
Mistakes. The bad part about the test being short is that if you do make mistakes, you may not have a lot of opportunity to prove to the examiner that you know how to do what correctly. You may not have a lot of opportunity to prove to the examiner that you could drive the correct way. All right, so that's the good part and the bad part about the test being short. All right. Okay, so that's the good part and the bad part about the test being short. Where was I going with that? Okay, so in terms of a written test, just to give you an example, it would be similar to me asking you, would you rather take, what kind of written test would you take? Would you rather take, oh, let's go back here. The written test isn't a good, is probably a good example. Would you rather take a written test that's 20 questions or a written test that's 50 questions, the permit test? Which one would you rather take? 20 question written permit test?
20 questions, because that's what I did when I got my permit.
Say that again?
I said 20 questions. That's the one I did.
Right, so you would rather take a 20 question written test than a 50 question written test. All right. On a 20 question written test, each question is worth how many points? 5. On a 50 question test, each question is worth how many?
2.
2. On which test can you afford to get more questions wrong before you fail?
The 50
50.
question.
This,
The 50 question test.
yeah.
All right. Your road test is more like which test? The 20 question
The 20
test or the
question.
50 question? Is it more
20
like the 20
question.
question or
The
the
20
50 question?
question.
Right. It's more like the 20 question test, the shorter test.
Yeah.
And normally when I give this example, I don't usually give the example of a 20 question test and a 50 question test. I give an example of a 4 question test. So compared to a 20 question test. So a 20 question test will have 5 points each for each question. If your test was only 4 questions, and the reason I say 4 questions because of these 4 main things: parallel parking, left turns, right turns, and broken U-turns. Those are the 4 main things that they're testing you on the road test. They will be looking at a whole bunch of other things, but these are the 4 main things that they're testing you on. All right. So if your test was just based off of these 4 things, how many of them can you get wrong and still pass?
1.
Okay, it would seem that way because each question, if these were questions on the test, that means each one of them in theory would be worth how many points? 25 each. Right. So which means technically, in theory, you could get one of them wrong. But we know that if you do your left turns right, do your left turns correctly, your right turns correctly, do your broken U-turns correctly, but you cannot parallel park. Is that 75? Do you get a 75 and still pass? Or is that a fail? You did your whole test correct. You did
It
your
could
whole
be a
test
fail
well.
because it's one time you got to do the
Fail,
parallel
fail.
part.
You said it's a pass or fail?
Fail.
It's a fail. How about if you parallel parked well, you did your left turns well, you did your right turns well, but you could not do a 3-point turn? Pass or fail?
Fail.
Fail.
How about if you did everything well except your right turns? Everything was good, but you could not make right turns.
Fail.
That's a fail. So how many of these 4 things can you afford to get wrong?
None.
None. Does that mean you have to be perfect with the parallel parking? No. Does that mean you have to be perfect with your left turns and your right turns? No. Does that mean you have to be perfect with your 3-point turns? No. You do not have to be perfect with these 4 things. You just have to do them well enough to satisfy the examiner that you are capable of doing them. All right. So part of the road test is you have to know what is acceptable with these 4 things and what is not acceptable. For example, what is not acceptable with parallel parking?
Not looking in your mirror.
I would say if you don't look in your mirrors, that's a problem, but it's probably you just get points taken off. But it probably would not automatically fail you. Now that might depend on the examiner that you have. And I would say not looking in the mirror I would say using your mirrors when you're parallel parking is not something that would, not the thing that they're looking for the most in terms of observation when you're parallel parking. When you're parallel parking, are they more concerned that you're looking using your mirrors properly, or that you're actually turned around looking over your shoulder?
Checking the blind spot.
Yeah.
Right. So
What
parallel
about
parking,
if you hit the curb?
using your mirrors and looking over your shoulder is important, but they're probably more concerned with you looking over your shoulder. All right. So I heard somebody say hitting the curb.
Or too close to the curb.
Okay. Right, so hitting the curb, we know is an automatic fail on the road test. So there's some other things that you cannot do that's not acceptable with parallel parking. I'll try to get into that a little bit later, but we know definitely hitting the curb is one of those things that's unacceptable, that'll fail you. How many steps should you be doing your your parallel parking in?
5.
Should be done ideally within 3 steps.
Yeah,
They
3.
may give you up to 5. But once you go over 3, they're going to take off points, 5 points. They may take off 5 points for excessive maneuvers. All right. So 3 is ideal. They will give you up to 5. They will give you up to 5 steps for parallel parking normally. But once you go over 3, that would usually be considered excessive maneuvers. All right, so left turns and right turns. What is unacceptable? What is an unacceptable mistake on your turns?
Wide turns. Wide turns.
Okay, like we described earlier, that was the first example I gave you, a wide right turn. But that was a turn that was so wide where you got into a completely different lane. What if it was wide, but you didn't get into a completely different lane? Is that a fail?
No.
But does it show the examiners that you might need more practice? Right.
Probably.
It might show
What
the
about
examiners that you might
What
need
about
more
failure
practice.
to signal?
Fail to signal, that is not normally a automatic fail on a road test. Where it could be an automatic fail, where I have seen it be an automatic fail, is if you're taking a road test and you are going around let's say it is a double parked vehicle and you got to go over the yellow line. You got to go over the yellow line to get around this vehicle. And you do not signal. Could that be a fail? Yes, I have seen that fail people before. All right. What if you are parked and you pull out into traffic, but you didn't signal when you pulled out? Is that a fail?
Yes.
Usually not. I've seen people get away with that. That is a very common mistake, and I've seen people get away with that. Broken U-turn, you go into the broken U-turn, but as you go into it, you fail to signal. Is that an automatic fail?
Sure.
Probably not. What about if you're making a turn and you forget to signal when you're making a turn? All of these things, all of these scenarios are potential where, could they fail you? Yes, technically, because like I said, can you get a ticket in a real life situation for not putting on your signal?
Yeah.
Yes. What is the purpose of a signal? What is the purpose of putting on your signal?
To indicate
Let
let the
other
other
drivers
drivers-
know what you're about to do. Sorry.
Right, to let other drivers know what you're about to do. Have you ever been driving down the road and somebody just pulls out in front of you and you're like, oh, wow, he didn't put on his signal? Have you ever been in that situation?
Yep.
Yeah.
Probably. All right. Did you think that was rude of that person?
Absolutely.
Right. So when you put on your signal, it indicates to other drivers what you are about to do. So that way it's not a surprise to them. So if you're pulling out in front of them, it would be good that you have on your signal so that they know, oh, this car is about to pull out in front of me. Or if you're getting ready to make a turn, they know, okay, this person is preparing to make a right turn or whatever. So I'm not making a right turn. So let me move over to the other side so I can get around them. All right. So these things are things you should do for safety reasons, and also just to be a good driver and to communicate with other drivers what you are about to do. All right. So most of these scenarios, I hear some paper in the background. Somebody's shuffling paper. Yeah, so most of these things could fail you, but I have not seen them fail you if you just did that mistake once. All right. So any of these things that I just talked about, if you just make that mistake one time, and it's typically not a fail, but the examiner will take off points for it. All right. But the one thing that I have seen fail people automatically is when they're going around a double parked vehicle. You got to go over to the other side of the road and you do not signal. I have seen that fail people. Any of the other ones could possibly fail you also, but I have not seen the examiners typically fail people for that. They typically will just take off points and then they'll watch to see if you do what again? If you make that same mistake again. Any mistake that you make on a road test, if you do it more than one time, could it possibly lead to you failing? Any mistake that you make on a road test, if you do it more than once, could it possibly lead to you failing the road test?
Yes.
Possibly.
Yes, it's possible. So that's what I talked about earlier, multiple mistakes, or repeated mistakes, I should say. So if you make any mistake that you make on this road test, if you repeatedly make it over and over and over again, more than twice, more than 3 times, it could possibly lead to you failing the test. Especially if the examiner brings it to your attention that it is a mistake. If the examiner brings up anything to you that is a potential mistake, that's almost like them saying in code, them saying, please fix this, otherwise I'm probably gonna fail you. So if you're driving too slow, they say, oh, it's driving too slow. Make sure you pick up your speed. If they say you didn't signal, make sure you signal properly. If you did not stop correctly at the stop sign, is that an automatic fail or just points off?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
If you don't stop correctly at a stop sign, is that usually they just give you a warning, or is that an automatic fail?
No.
It depends on the examiner. So, and I'll try to go into that also, stop signs, how to handle stop signs. Anyway, let me go back a little bit. So these 4 main things, these are the 4 main things that they're going to be testing you on a road test. You have to show the examiner that you have the ability to do each one of these 4 things correctly. It does not mean that you have to be perfect with these 4 things. The mistakes that are acceptable, that might be just points off, and then the mistakes that you might make during these 4 things, that could be an automatic fail. All right, so parallel parking, we know one of those mistakes is you cannot hit the curb. Hitting the curb is typically an automatic fail on the road test. I have seen it where people hit the curb or touch the curb and still got away with it, but don't count on that. That's usually an examiner thing. Maybe that particular examiner that you had on that day was having a good day, or they don't feel like you're just barely touching the curb was a reason to failure. Left turns and right turns. I would say we talk about wide turns. So it depends on how wide the turn is. So yes, so if you make a left turn or right turn, if it's just slightly wide, you're probably not going to fail you automatically for a slightly wide right turn. But what they're going to do is, if you make a turn that's not that great, they're going to ask you to do that turn again. So let's say you make a right turn. And your first right turn was a little bit wide, but not that wide. $5 points off or fail? First right turn was a little bit wide, but not that wide. 5 points off or you failed automatically. All right, so 5 points
5
off.
points.
Is your examiner satisfied that you know how to make right turns at this point?
No.
No. So they probably ask you to do what again?
Turn again.
Another right
Another
turn.
right turn.
So you make another right turn, and this one is good. Is your examiner now satisfied that you know how to make right turns correctly?
They probably ask you to make another one just to be sure.
Right, so here you did 1 out of 2. You make another right turn, and this one is also good. 2 out of 3. Is your examiner now satisfied that you know how to make right turns correctly?
Probably.
Well, 2 out of 3, if you're good at math or have a calculator, what percentage is that?
Mm.
66.6%. Is that passing? The 60.6 is that if that was your score on a test, if your test was just based off your ability to make right turns, and you got a 66.6, is that passing?
Mm.
What score is
No,
typically
borderline.
passing on a test, huh?
100.
What score is typically passing on a test? If you had a written test,
Like
what score is typically passing? A 70 or a 65?
65.
65. Some places, is it a 70? Some places, a 65 is passing. In some places, a 70 is passing. All right. And either way, it is just barely passing. All right. So you may have some examiners that might say, all right, you did it 2 out of 3 times. That's good enough. All right. I don't need to see you do this anymore. It's decent enough. But you might have another examiner that might look at that and say 2 out of 3. I'm not certain that this person can make these right turns well, because 2 out of 3 is just barely doing it well. They may want to see you do another one. They might want to see you do another right turn. If you do that 4th right turn correctly, then you're at what? Yeah, 3 out of 4. That's 75% on your right turns. All right, it's hard to do better than that unless they're going to keep making you make 1,000 right turns. All right, so 3 out of 4, that's going to be 2 out of 3 is probably going to be acceptable to most people, but some of them, they want to, if you make the first one bad, especially depending on how bad it is, they may want you to do it at least 3 more times to be certain that you're doing it correctly. So if you're taking a road test and the examiner keeps asking you to make the same turn, the same type of turn over and over and over again, they're trying to see and determine if you're going to fix the mistake that they saw you make on that first turn.
Okay.
All right. So this is if you do that 4th turn correctly, you probably be good. But if you make that 4th turn and it's a little bit too wide, now you're back down to what? 2 out of 4.
2 out of 4.
2 out of 4 is what percentage?
50.
50. All right. So let's say your right turns on your road test. 2 out of the 4 of them were good. 2 out of the 4 were not so good. But you did everything else well on the road test. Your parking was good. Your left turns were good. Your broken U-turns were good. Pass or fail?
Okay.
That's good. That's good. This is 50%. This was good. Pass or fail?
Pass.
Okay. It depends on the examiner. All right. Did you, in terms of right turns, did you do your right turns well enough to demonstrate an ability, a consistent ability to do right turns correctly?
No.
Nope.
No, you didn't. For some examiners, if you do not show them a consistent ability to do your turns correctly, that a lot of times could be a reason they could fail you. All right, even though you did all of the other things well. All right, think about it in terms of this. If somebody gets 50% on anything, does that show any level of skill?
No.
No.
If you flip a quarter, is there any skill in guessing whether it's going to land heads or tails? If you flip a quarter, is there any skill involved in guessing whether it's going to land on heads or tails?
No.
No. It's either going to be head or tail.
Right. So no matter how many times you flip this, the odds of you guessing it correctly are always going to be what? What percentage?
50.
50-50.
50%.
Right. So if you guess it correctly, was that skill or was that by luck?
Luck.
Look.
That's luck. So anything that you do that's 50%, you know, it can be basically it could be judged and be said that might be you just got lucky that you did that correctly. The times that you did it correctly, it could be said, depending on what that thing is, it could be said that you just got lucky when you did it correctly. Why? Because you're consistently at 50%. So 50% of the time it's good, 50% of the time it's not that great. All right. So that doesn't show the examiners that you consistently do that correctly. Also, when you're taking the road test, are they judging you? How should I ask this? Are they judging you based on your not sure how to ask this question. All right. Are they judging you based on your ability to, are they comparing you to other people taking a road test, or are they comparing you to other drivers, to people who already have their license, to experienced drivers? That might be the best way I can ask you right now. Are they comparing you to other people taking a road test, or are they comparing you to experienced drivers when you take the test? There's a better way.
Yeah, I say
ask that
experienced
question.
drivers.
Are they simply concerned with how well you do on a road test, or are they more concerned with how you're going to drive after you pass the road test?
After you pass the road test?
Yeah, that's probably a better way to ask the question. All right. they are more concerned with how your skills, the skills that you show them on the road test, they're more concerned with how those skills will translate into you being a driver on the road every day by yourself with other traffic. All right, so they're more concerned with how you're going to drive after the road test than they are how you drive on the road test. All right. How long after you pass your road test will it take for you to be eligible to drive by yourself? How long after you take your road test will it take for you to be eligible to drive by yourself? At what point are you officially a licensed driver? How long after you take your road test will it take for you to be considered officially a licensed driver? Is it right away when you get your results? Is it after a certain period of time? Or is it when you get the license, the physical license in the mail?
When you get your physical license.
When you
Right
get your
away.
results.
It's when you get your results. So you are considered officially a licensed New York State driver as soon as you get your results that you pass. All right.
Okay.
So that means you can drive right away. So your examiner has a responsibility to make sure that you are capable of being on the road by yourself in everyday traffic. If they feel for whatever reason that you are not ready to be on the road by yourself every day in traffic, should they be giving you your driver's license?
No.
No.
Probably not. So when you're taking your lessons and you're taking your road test, think of it in terms of that. Have you shown the examiner that you are capable of driving, being on the road every day by yourself from the moment that you get your results? So a lot of times people, oh, there's still some noise in the background, some scratching, fumbling around. I don't know who it is. All right, so look, okay, it's less now. Okay, good. Okay, so yeah, so your examiner is concerned with, are you driving well enough? Did you show them that you are capable of driving on the road at that moment? Are you ready, basically? All right. If you need a little bit of practice, is it okay to pass somebody that just needs a little bit of practice? Probably. Is it okay to pass somebody that needs a lot of practice?
No.
What if they only need a lot of practice in just one thing?
No.
Probably not. Again, going back, the DMV has determined that these 4 things are basic requirements to passing a road test. So if you just need a little bit of practice, more practice with the parallel parking, you could probably still pass. If you just need a little bit of practice with your left turns and your right turns, you could probably still pass. If you just need a little bit of practice with your 3-point turns, you could probably still pass. But any one of those things, the examiner feels you need a lot of practice, that's probably something that can fail you. All right. What do you think is most important on the road test? Or what are they looking for the most? Experience, or technique?
Technique.
Who do you think has a better chance of passing the road test? Somebody that's been driving for 10 years or somebody that's been driving for 10 lessons?
10 years.
Okay, so you think the person that's been driving for 10 years has a better chance of passing the road test?
Yeah, they have more practice, but they've been driving a longer time, more experience, I guess.
Right, so they've been driving a lot longer. They have way more experience driving. So in theory, they should have a better chance of passing the road test. But what else comes with that experience?
Bad habits.
Bad habits. Right. So what comes with that experience is a lot of bad habits. So when you take the road test, they're looking for you. That experience is good and being comfortable on the road is great, but that must be coupled with good driving habits, good driving technique. If you are a really good driver, but you have poor driving technique, most likely you're going to fail the road test. I've taken students to the road test several times where I've had students who've been driving for X amount of years of driving, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, whatever. Maybe they drove in another country. Maybe they drove trucks. You know, a lot of people tell me, oh, I drive trucks. But those people don't do a driving lesson. Why? Because they're confident in their driving skills, and they should be. You know, most of those people are really good drivers, pretty competent drivers. So I'll take them to the road test, and then on the other hand, I may have another student who's only been driving for maybe 6 lessons or 10 lessons. They're not that confident on the road. They don't have a lot of experience, but they do have good technique. Who do you think is more likely to pass the road test? The person with 6 lessons or 6 or 10 lessons in good technique, or the person with 10 years or more years of experience, but has bad habits? Who do you think has a better chance of passing the test?
The person with technique.
The person with the better technique. Right. How long do you think it would take an experienced driver? How many lessons do you think it would take the average experienced driver to get rid of some of those bad habits that they have and get better technique?
Probably 3.
Probably 3. Some people can do it. Sometimes even 1 lesson is good enough. Sometimes 1 lesson is good enough just to at least know, to have a sense of, all right, basically 1 lesson just as a reality check is sometimes good enough. So like, okay, or at least, or to get confirmation that they are driving well enough for the test. So I would say for any experienced driver, do at least 1 lesson as a reality check to know that, hey, yes, I'm doing this correctly. I do have the proper technique. I don't have bad habits that could fail me automatically on a test. Most experienced drivers have bad habits that will fail them before they even get 2 minutes into the test. So 1 lesson, at least to do a reality check. Sometimes that 1 lesson is good enough. Sometimes it may, and depending on the bad habits that the person has, then it may take 2 or 3 lessons to get rid of some of those bad habits. But anywhere from 1 to 3, I would suggest, if you're an experienced driver. If you never drove here before, if you drove in another country, and you have tons of experience in that other country, but not here, I would say do at least 3 lessons. If you have a ton of experience in another country, and in that other country, you are used to driving on the other side of the road. So here we drive on the right-hand side. If your experience, the bulk of your experience is driving on the left-hand side of the road in another country, you might need to do 5 lessons or more. The way the driving in other countries is a lot of times is so different than the way we drive here, than the roads that you might see here in the United States, that even an experienced driver from another country sometimes has to do 5 or more lessons just to get used to the roads, just to get used to knowing the difference between a stop sign and an always stop sign and how to handle that. All right, so keep that in mind. So if you're an experienced driver and your experience is here, you're born and raised, and you're not in the United States, and all your experience is here, I would say anywhere from 1 to 3 lessons. If you are from another country and you are an experienced driver, I would say anywhere, at least 3 lessons. And if you're used to driving on the other side of the road, probably it's going to take at least 5. If you pick up things really quickly, maybe you could get away with 2 or 3. But the bulk of your experience is on the other side of the road. Seriously think about taking at least 3 lessons. It might take 5 or more to get you to the point where you need to be, where you can pass the test. Why? Because the road and the driving system is completely different than what you might be used to. A lot of countries, they don't have a lot of stop signs, they don't have a lot of traffic lights, they don't have a lot of rules, period. So it's kind of a free for all. And if you're kind of driving in those conditions, even though you can handle the vehicle, it doesn't mean that you can pick up the rules and the regulations of the US roads and New York roads specifically. So keep that in mind. All right. All right. Now let me see, where should I go next? It's about 12. Okay. Okay, so when you take the test, when you schedule your test, scheduling your road test, it takes about typical road test dates, about 6 to 8 weeks to get a road test date. That's right now. All right. And that's, but once summer starts, it might go further than that. It may get further out than that once summer starts, because there's going to be so many people trying to schedule their road test and take their road test. You can schedule your road test anywhere in New York State. So you don't have to stay in your borough. You could come out of your borough or go into another county to take your road test if that's what you choose to do. Although you will know the roads better, you will probably know the roads better in the county that you live in. But a lot of people do go to other counties to take their road test. So you can take your road test anywhere. All right. When you go take your road test, what do you need to bring with you?
Your permit and your certificate.
You need to bring your learner's permit, can your permit be expired? Can you bring an expired permit?
No.
No.
Can you bring the temporary paper permit that they give you when you first got your permit? Can you get the, do you have to bring the temporary, can you bring that one? Not the temporary paper permit. It must be. If you do not have your picture permit, what else can you bring? Or is that it?
Your 5-hour certificate.
Well, yeah, let me go down. You need your 5-hour certificate. That's called the MV 278. But what if you don't have your picture permit? Can you, if you don't have the picture permit, can you bring your paper permit or an expired permit?
No.
You could bring an expired document. Oh no, you can't bring an expired permit. But you could bring the temporary. You can bring the temporary permit if you have a non-driver's ID.
Okay.
So if you say, for example, you lose your picture permit, but you have the temporary permit, or what you could do is if you lose your picture permit and you have a non-driver's ID, you should be able to go online and print out a temporary permit, a duplicate of that. So you can print out that, or you could go down, maybe go down to the DMV. Sometimes they have, some of them have kiosks, and you could just print out what you need from the kiosk. You know, I'm not sure the rules now, if you need appointments to get into the building. I know they were doing that at one point. They may still be doing that, I'm not sure. So, but you should be able to do it on your computer. If you have a printer, you should be able to print out a temporary permit. If you do that, make sure you bring a non-driver's ID. They will only accept New York State issued IDs. Um, 5-hour certificate, not expired. How long does your 5-hour certificate last?
Is it a year?
A year?
For 1 year?
If they expire, sometimes they give you a little bit of a grace period to still use it. But only if you schedule road test before it expired. Okay, so they usually give you a grace period of 1 month after your 5-hour class certificate expires, but only if you schedule your road test before it expired. All right, so what else do you need to bring? So you got to bring your learner's permit, you got to bring your 5-hour class certificate, What else? And the only other way you don't need to bring your certificate is if you did it online. So there's that doesn't apply to anybody here doing this class today, but if somebody else is watching the video, if you do your class online, where it's not like a person like me sitting directly in front of the computer or directly in front of you doing the class, but it's all like an automated system, then they don't give you an actual physical 5-hour class certificate. Okay, what else do you need to bring with you to your road test? If you're under 18, if you're under 18, you need to bring what else? Anybody know? If you're under 18, you need to bring
form?
Yes, a consent form. Also, if you're under 18, you have to have your learner's permit at least 6 months before you can take the road test. And if you pass the road test, if you're under 18 and you pass the road test, are you a legal licensed New York State driver? Or do you still have to wait until you're 18 before you can drive?
Wait till you're 18?
Right, so you can pass your road test, but you will still have to wait until you're 18 in order to drive. That's even with somebody sitting with a licensed driver in a car. You actually have more driving privileges on a learner's permit than you do if you get the actual license, if you pass the road test. It sounds backwards, but I guess that's what they want. I guess they want to try to restrict the, people who are under 18 from driving on the road unsupervised. So you actually have more driving privileges if you're under 18 and you keep your learner's permit than if you are under 18 and you actually have your driver's license. Technically, if you're under 18 and you actually have your driver's license, technically you cannot drive, even with somebody in a car. That's for New York City. I should put that here. Outside of New York City, it's a little bit different. I think it's 17. But in New York City, it's if you're under 18, you still have to wait. You can learn to drive from 16 anywhere, but it almost doesn't make sense to even take your road test until, I would say, usually what I tell people is wait until you're like at least 17 and then take the road test. At least that way, if you have to wait, you don't have to wait that long. It's just another year, or in most people's cases, it's just a few more months, and then they'll be legally able to do it. So that's not too bad. But if you do it at 16, you know, and you get your license, it's almost like you have to, it's like, why did you do it? Because you still can't drive. Now, if you got your license and you got pulled over by a cop, and you're with your parent or legal or somebody that can drive, that has their license already, if you drive with a licensed driver and you're under 18 and a cop pulls you over, there's a good chance that they're probably not going to give you a ticket for that. But you know, you never know. You know, I don't know how well they know this rule or this law, because a lot of people are confused by it, and if normal people are confused by it, normally cops are kind of confused by it too. All right, so if you're under 18, you need to bring these things. What else? What else do you need to bring with you to the road test? Learner's permit, 5-hour class certificate, what else? You need to bring a licensed driver. Can you show up to the road test by yourself?
Not if you're using your own vehicle, no.
No. Cannot show up to the road test by yourself. And all right, so you have to show up with a licensed driver. What else do you need to bring? A licensed driver, and what else? Can you show up on foot with no vehicle? And you must bring a vehicle. All right, so these are the basic things that you need to bring with you to your road test. Learner's permit, 5-hour class certificate. If you're under 18, you need an MV-262 consent form. You need to bring a licensed driver and a vehicle. Okay. So for a lot of you, if you're with a driving school, you'll get your licensed driver and your vehicle from your driving school. You do not necessarily have to go through a driving school to take the test. If you have your family or friend that can assist you with that, then you could use them as your licensed driver and their vehicle. So you don't necessarily have to go through a driving school. Although what I would say is, what vehicle would you think an examiner would feel more comfortable in? A driving school vehicle that has a brake, or a regular vehicle that does not?
Driving school.
Right. So they'll probably feel more comfortable in a driving school vehicle. That, you know, now that all depends on your ability to drive. If you get in a car and you are a very competent driver, what's going to make them feel comfortable is your ability to control a car. Soon as you start driving, they're going to be able to tell if you are a experienced driver or not, and how comfortable you are, and what kind of control you have over the vehicle. So if they see that you have really good control over the car, then it doesn't matter if it's a driving school vehicle or a normal or a regular standard passenger vehicle. But if you're a new driver and you're a little bit shaky, which is going to be most people taking the road test, they're probably gonna feel more comfortable in a driving school vehicle because they have the ability to stop the car if they need to do so. All right. In a regular passenger vehicle, they may not have the ability to stop the car, or they may have limited ability to control the vehicle if you are going to get into a problem, or if you have issues controlling a car. All right. Now, when you take the test, some people outside of here making a lot of noise. When you take the road test, how many times can you take the road test if you fail?
2.
Okay, so a lot of people have heard that you could just take the road test twice. It's unlimited. There's no cap or limit on how many times you can take the test. You can take the road test as many times as you want. The only issue is that every 2 times you take the test, you have to pay the DMV what?
I'm not sure.
So you have to pay the DMV $10. All right. Every 2 times you take the test. All right. Now sometimes that's confused with people confuse that with a driving school charges you to use their vehicle. Most driving schools will charge you every 2 times you take the test or every time you take the test. All right, so there's some confusion with that because people have heard that the DMV, you can take the road test twice. But the thing with that is that the DMV does not provide a vehicle for the road test for you. So that you either have to get on your own or you have to go through a driving school. If you go to a driving school, most driving schools will typically charge you each time you take the test. So if you took a package with them, then it's usually 1 road test is included in that. So if you have some doubt about that or some discrepancy, then just call or ask your driving school how many road tests are included in the package that you took. All right, just so you guys can be on the same page. All right, but say for example you have your own vehicle, you can take the road test as many times as you want. Because you're using your own vehicle, then the only out-of-pocket cost that you would have is at $10 every 2 times you take the test. All right. You can also schedule your road test on your own. When you get your 5-hour class certificate, there's actually a phone number and a DMV website on the back of that. So you don't necessarily need a driving school to schedule a road test for you. Although driving schools are usually better at scheduling the road test, or they have more time to dedicate to getting a road test date. But not every time you call or check on a DMV website, will there be a date available. Sometimes there's nothing and you have to keep checking to see if something pops up. All right, so sometimes it's just easier and to let the driving school do it, especially if you're already doing driving lessons with that driving school, and especially if they're going to be taking you to the road test with their vehicle. It's probably better to let them schedule it so that way they could coordinate it with their schedule better. If you're gonna schedule it on your own, then as soon as you schedule the date, let your driving school know, your driving instructor know, okay, this is the date that I scheduled. Can you take me on this date? So that way you can coordinate it with them. Because they may have other road tests already on that same date and at a different time in a different location. So when you schedule things on your own and you're going with a driving school, try to coordinate with them and so that way you guys could be on the same page with that. Getting road tests faster than the 6 to 8 weeks, that is doable also, but that would either take a lot of effort on your part, or you can contact a school or company that specializes in getting early dates. And there are people that do that. But it'll cost an extra fee, of course, to get an early road test date.
Can you
And
provide
early
that?
road test dates can be done in anywhere from 2 days to a week, whatever. All right, so again, that's doable. It's just usually an extra fee. Every place charges different. You might find some place that charges you only $40. Some places might charge you $70. Some places might charge $90, depending on how soon and how quick you need that testing. All right. Okay. All right. So that's basic rundown of scheduling and road tests and what you need to bring when you get to your test site. Now, once you get there, you're going to be. Do they see you right away, or will you be in a line with other vehicles?
You'll be in a line with other vehicles.
Oh, but I should have added in the other section is your road test will typically be they give it Monday to Friday, and the times are usually 8:30 to 4. Those are the typical times. There are some places that have other, some places have Saturday days. But those are hard to get. Saturday, Brooklyn does not have Saturday dates. Some locations do. Some locations have other hours. May have hours from like 7 a.m. to like 8 p.m. All right, again, that's probably not Brooklyn. All right, but some other areas have those days, like a Saturday date, or some locations have a 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. Again, not Brooklyn, and they might be harder to get. So if you need something like that, it will probably cost you a little extra to get those dates, unless you're trying to get them yourself. Like I said, you know, some of these dates are hard to get sometimes. You can get them on your own, but it would take you trying to call the number or keep checking or keep hitting refresh, you know, like you're trying to win a prize, you know, because when the dates pop up, when you do get dates that pop up, especially if it's something that's in high demand, those dates go very, very quickly. Like once they pop up, they go on in like 2-3 seconds. So you have to keep calling, checking. And then if it pops up, book it right away. All right. And then, you know, you got lucky that you grabbed it. Otherwise, if you need something like that, that's kind of a specialized kind of time or day or area or whatever, then you may have to contact somebody that specializes in getting stuff like that. And then, you know, and whatever, pay whatever the fee they charge to get you that. So anyway, when you get to the road test, you're going to be in a line with other vehicles. And then you just wait. Now, with those times, you might have an 8:30 time, and there may be 20 other cars there or 20 other people with the same exact time that you have. All right, so it's not that you just get there and your time is your time. Yes, your time is your time, but there might be 20 other people there that have the same exact time. And that's why you may have to wait online. All right, once you get online, most road test sites have anywhere from 2 to 4 examiners. It could be more depending on how busy and how many vehicles are at that road test site that day. I would say maybe 3 to 4. All right. When you get there, just stay online and you wait. Make sure you have all your documents ready. They probably still require you to wear masks. You may have to disinfect the car. No. With wipes. What else? And then you just wait online. When you get to the front, near the front, some examiner may come to the vehicle and they may check your paperwork. And once they check you in, they'll say something like, okay, that's when you get in the car. When you show up to the road test site, when you show up to the road test site, do you have to be a passenger or can you show up driving to the road test site in the driver's seat? Driver's seat or passenger seat?
Passenger.
All right. For New York City, I say any of the boroughs in New York City, it's the driver's seat. All right. Outside of New York City, it can be different. It can be either or. For you to know for sure, then you probably have to contact that DMV to be certain of what it is. But I know Westchester County, some Long Island, I believe those places. If you have your learner's permit, it's okay for you to be in the driver's seat as you pull up. But in New York City, they want to see you before you get in a car, you know, and that may be just to identify you, to make sure you look like who you are on your learner's permit. Because sometimes people do tricky things. You know, sometimes people do have other people try to take the road test for them. All right. So they want to see you before you get in the vehicle. So once you get in the vehicle, what should you do? Once you get in the vehicle, what should you do as soon as you get in the car? Taking your road test.
Seatbelt,
Seatbelt, what else?
check your mirrors,
Fix your mirrors, if you have to. What else? So those are the three things you're gonna do. Fix your mirrors, fix your chair, and fix your seatbelt. After that, you just do what? Just wait for instructions. All right. So you wait for instructions. Let's say the examiner, at that point, the examiner is gonna, while you're doing all of that, the examiner is gonna be checking you in, they're gonna be doing their little paperwork, they're gonna be fiddling around on their little tablet, doing whatever they need to do to do the check-in process or whatever. All right. Oh, make sure, one thing I did not say earlier, I should probably, I'll just put it here. Make sure they're gonna be checking your document. They're gonna check your document for expiration date, expiration dates. They're going to be checking your date of birth. They're going to be looking at your learner's permit to see what kind of restrictions there are. The most typical restriction people will have on their learner's permit is for glasses. And a lot of times people forget to bring their glasses. If your learner's permit says that you're supposed to wear glasses and you show up to your road test without your glasses, will they allow you to take the test?
no.
Right, you will not. So make sure if it says on your learner's permit that you're supposed to wear your glasses, make sure you bring your glasses and wear your glasses on your road test. You could tell them that if you say you forgot, you could tell them you're wearing contacts, or sometimes people, and they might check, they might just look at your eyes to see if they can see it. Most of the time they can't. It's hard to tell a lot of times if somebody has contacts in. They also may what was I gonna say? Glasses. Oh, yeah. Sometimes people get laser eye surgery. So if you get laser eye surgery, you no longer need glasses or contacts. Make sure you get that changed on your learner's permit before you go take your road test. Because if you show up there and you say, "Oh, I can see I got laser eye surgery," then they still won't allow you to take it. And that might even be if you even have if you have a note from your doctor, they probably still won't take it. You'll probably have to take that note to the DMV. They will probably give you another eye chart test when you get there, and they will take that with your documentation that you got your laser eye surgery, and then they will take off the glasses restriction off of your learner's permit. That's probably what you would have to do. All right. So make sure you take control of that. Handle that before you take your test. So date of birth, they're going to check to see if any of the documents expired. Try not to show up with damaged documents. Also, try not to have either cross outs or written incorrectly. So try not to have important information crossed out or written incorrectly on your 5-hour certificate. So that means any type of date should not be crossed out or whatever. Ideally, unless if it's by the driving school, then they have to initial it to certify that that's an official correction of what's on there. But more than likely, they would prefer the DMV would prefer the driving school not to cross things out and initial it. But to actually just write you a new certificate with the corrected information on it. So things that you want to be careful that's correct is any of the dates, date of birth, the date that the certificate was issued. Your name should be matching your learner's permit. The address is not that big of a deal to match your learner's permit. That doesn't necessarily have to match. But the name must match, the date of birth must match, what else? And the learner's permit ID number must match. So those things cannot, you don't want to have crossed out or wrong on your 5-hour class certificate. So they'll be checking your document for those things while you're fixing your chair, fixing your seatbelt, fixing your mirrors. All right, so once they finish doing those things, they're going to say something like, when you are ready, you can start the test. So they're going to say something like, when you're ready, you can start the test. All right, so once they say that, what is the first thing you do, or what are some of the things you do? What is the first thing you do? When they say, when you are ready, you can start the test. It's the first thing you do.
Check your surroundings before you pull out and use your indicator. Your signal.
Okay, say that again.
You check your mirrors to make basically observe your surroundings.
Okay, so check your mirrors. What else?
Put on your signal if you're going out, like left or right.
Put on your signal. What else?
Seatbelt. Make sure your seatbelt on.
Well, you did that already. You put on your seatbelt when you first got in the car.
You make sure you look.
Well, you're using your mirrors. When you say make sure you look, you mean looking over your shoulder?
Yeah.
Anything else?
Put the car in drive.
The car and drive. So check your mirrors, put on your signal, look over your shoulder, put the car in drive. What else? Anything? There's a few things missing, I think.
Have your foot on the brake.
Put on a brake, okay. Where would you put that at on this list? Because certain things don't have to be in a certain order, and certain things should be in a certain order. Where would you put foot on the brake?
Before you put it in drive.
Okay. Okay, anything else? Do we have anything missing here? So we get ready to pull out. The exam says when you're ready, you can start the test. So far we got check your mirrors, put on your signal, look over your shoulder / check your blind spot, put your foot on the brake, put the car in drive. What else? Anything? Trying to close my eyes and think about it. There are some things missing here. Anybody? Or is that it? There's a couple of things missing. What's next?
Wait for instruction.
Well, they did give you instruction. So that's it at that point. They're gonna say, when you're ready, you start the test. So you check your mirrors, you put on your signal, you look over your shoulder, check your blind spot, your foot is on the brake, you put the car in drive. What happens after you put the car in drive?
Start driving.
Okay, tell me how to do that.
Where you turn,
Slowly
depends
accelerate.
upon the direction in which you're going.
Say that again. I heard two people.
No, I was saying depends upon the direction in which you're going. You start to turn the wheel in the direction that you're going to be coming out of.
Okay,
you're
so
gonna
you
be
turn the
heading
steering wheel. You turn
Slowly
the steering
accelerate.
wheel. Okay, accelerate. So press the gas. So we're pulling out. So now the wheel is turned, you're pressing the gas to come out. Anything you do after that? So how do you successfully pull out of this parking spot?
Well, after you would have turned the wheel in the direction in which you're going to be going, and you pull out and you turn the car, then you try to bring the wheel back so that you could see straight ahead of you.
Okay, let me step back for a little bit. Is there anything we forgot to do here? Look at this list. We're pulling out you're in the car, you're sitting there with the examiner. The examiner says when he finishes doing what he's doing, your mirrors are fixed, your seatbelt is on, your chair is fixed, your seatbelt is on, and your mirrors are fixed. The examiner says when you're ready, you can start the test. So when they say that, you're gonna check your mirrors again, you're gonna put on your signal, you're gonna look over your shoulder, check your blind spot, take your foot off the brake, put the car in drive, turn the steering wheel, press the gas, and start to come out. Is there anything you need to do to finish coming out of that spot? Is there anything you need to do after you press the gas?
Well, you will need to straighten up the wheel to start driving after you come out of the parking spot and you're heading back.
All right, let me step back a little bit. Let's say you do all of this that we have here, and when you press the gas, the car does not move. All right.
Maybe a park. You have the emergency brake on. Check for that.
Oh, okay, check your emergency brake. You check the emergency brake. The emergency brake is down, that's not it. What else? What else do you check? Now, this is a real life scenario that I've seen happen pretty much every day at the road test site.
Right.
So you did all of that, the car does not move. Why? It could be the emergency brake, so you check that. You check that, and it's not the emergency brake. What's another reason why your car might not move in this situation?
The engine could be stalled. I don't know, I'm just guessing.
Okay, how do you know if the engine is stalled?
You look probably the
Checking
engine
the
check
gas.
light. I'm just see if you have enough gas. I don't know.
All right, so maybe there's no gas. Check the gas. Check the gas gauge. That's not how you spell gauge. I always mess up with gauge.
Gauge.
G-A, what? G-U-E?
Gauge.
Like that? Gauge?
Mhm.
Gauge? Okay, cool. Check gas gauge. Check the gas gauge. All right, car does not move. Why? Check emergency brake. Check the gas gauge. All right, so you check the gas gauge. It looks like there's gas in the car. What else? What could cause a car not to move?
Battery's dead. I don't know.
Battery's dead. If the battery's dead and the gas gauge
won't
and there's
start.
no gas in the car would probably be what? On or off at this point, if that happened. Car ran
It'll
out of
be
gas or the battery died. How could you
It'll be
tell?
off.
How can you tell if the battery's dead or there's no gas in the car?
You check your dash.
Well, you would look at the gas gauge to see it, or you might press the gas, the car's not moving, but we know that already. How do you know if the battery is dead?
Well, if the engine would stall, nothing will be happening electronically in
It wouldn't
Okay.
start.
the car.
Wouldn't be on.
All right, so like she said, nothing, well, the car's not moving. Nothing electronic will be working. That's not necessarily true. Let me just take that off, because sometimes the battery could be dead and the car won't start because the battery is dead, but you may see the other things electronically working. But one way you can tell, one thing you can tell if the car is not on, how can you know if the car's on or not?
Sometimes you can feel it. Sometimes the dash will tell you.
Okay, so dashboard. What about the dashboard can tell you if the car is on or not? When the car is on, should you see a lot of lights on the dashboard or no lights?
A lot
A
of
lot
light
of lights.
When it's on or off?
when it's on.
When you say a lot of lights, what do you mean?
The speedometer is lit up. It'll say ready to go or ready to use.
Okay.
All the
Now,
dials are there.
well, now when I talk about the dashboard lights, I'm talking about there's gonna be something like a check engine light. There might be brake light. There's gonna be all types of lights that you don't normally see on a car, shouldn't see on a car if it's on, if it's actually starting. What else? Check engine, brake. What else? Check battery. What else? There could be several lights. All right. So if you see a lot of light, not that the dashboard is lighted, but that you see all of these different warning lights on the dashboard. If you see a lot of warning lights, maybe that's what I was just saying. If you see a lot of warning lights on the dashboard, what does that usually mean? So these other lights that I'm talking about, check engine, the brake, check the battery. Those lights, if the car is started and on, you should not be seeing all of those lights on the dashboard. If you're seeing a lot of warning lights lit up on the dashboard, that's usually an indication that the car is what? On or off. That's usually an indication that the car is not on. All right, so it's good to know these things about a car, all right? All right, so let's say you see that. Let's say you see that there's a lot of warning lights lit up on a dashboard. Now you know that it's a good possibility that the car is what, on or off?
So,
It's probably off. How do we get the car back on?
probably try starting it again.
Did we even start it in the first place?
Yes, because we came out.
No,
You did. You only put it in drive.
we tried to come out. Did anybody
Oh, we
tell me that
tried.
to start the car?
No,
Is that on our list?
no.
No, that's not
No.
on our list.
Wow.
So remember, I kept asking you, is there anything else?
So, yep.
Where should start the car be on this list that I have up here?
Have to look over your shoulder.
No. After you finish checking the mirror, you would already have your seatbelt on and
Well, all of that
ready
stuff,
to move out. You put on the brake.
check it. We already checked the mirrors. We already fixed our mirrors, I should say. There's a difference between fixing your mirrors and checking your mirrors for traffic. All right, so we already fixed our mirrors. We already fixed our chair. We already fixed our seatbelt. Up here, we're checking the mirrors for, not to fix them, but we're checking the mirrors for traffic. All right, where should start the car be on this list?
After you put your foot on the brake?
You put your foot.
Okay, after you put your foot on the brake. Okay, so we got check your mirrors for traffic, put the signal on, look over your shoulder for traffic, put your foot on the brake, start the car, put the car in drive, turn the steering wheel, press the gas. Are we good, or we need to do anything else before we pull out into the road? What should you do after you press the gas?
Start moving the car.
Should we look again for traffic?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Should we check him? So after you press the gas, should we check the mirrors for traffic and look over your shoulder? Should we do both?
We should do both.
Okay, so if we should do both, should those two things be up here? Should they be down here after press the gas, or should they be in both places?
They could be in both places.
Oh, sure. Okay, so so you get in the car, you fix your chair, fix your seatbelt, fix your mirrors. The examiner says, when you're ready, you can start the test. So the first thing you do is check your mirrors for traffic and put on a signal, look over your shoulder, or should you put your foot on the brake? Or does it matter? It probably
Usually
doesn't
it puts
matter.
us on the brain.
It probably doesn't matter, but me personally, I would do this first. And if the examiner, when I get in the car, the examiner says, when you're ready, you can start the test. Me personally, I will put my foot on the brake first, and then I would start the car. After that, then I would do what? Before I check my mirrors for traffic, I would do what? What do you think should go before checking mirrors for traffic?
This,
I will put my signal on. And what else would I do before I check my mirrors for traffic? I would do what? Should I put the car in drive first? I would also put the car in drive. I would also do what?
Look over my shoulder.
Before I check my mirrors, I would turn the steering wheel. And it's actually, I'm thinking of something else that we forgot to put here. So all of these things I would do first. So examiner told me to start the test. So the first thing I would do is put my foot on the brake. Second thing I would do is start the car. And then I would, and even before I put on my signal and put the car in drive, there's something I would do here before I do that. And that is what? When you're pulling out into traffic, when you're in that line of cars, will there be cars parked behind you, other vehicles that are taking the test, people taking the test behind you?
Yes.
it may be.
Will there be possibly other vehicles taking the test in front of you?
Yeah.
Do you have enough room to just pull out into traffic? How do you know if you have enough room to just put the car in drive and pull out into traffic? How do you know? Should you check first to see if you have enough room in front of you to pull out? All right, foot on the brake, start the car, check to see if you have enough space to pull out. Because if you don't have enough space to pull out, what do you need to do first? What do you need to do right after that? Put the car in drive or put the car in reverse?
Reverse.
The car reverse.
Put the car in reverse. Is that an important step? Checking to see if you have enough space?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, please. So foot on the brake, start the car, check to see if you have enough space to pull out. If you do, then okay, then you could put your signal on, put your car in drive, and before you check your mirrors, I would do what?
Turn the steering wheel.
I would turn my steering wheel before I check my mirrors. So all of these things I would do before I check traffic. If you check for traffic and then you got to do all, remember we had these things first. We had check your mirrors and look over your blind spot, check your shoulders for your blind spot. We had that as the first things to do on our list. If you did those two things as the first things on your list, and then you still have to do all of this other stuff, that still leaves us that once we're ready to move out into traffic, that we still have to do what again? Check our mirrors and look over your shoulder for traffic. So me personally, if I'm taking my test, an examiner says, when you're ready to start the test, you can start the test. The first thing I'm gonna do before I even worry about is there any traffic is, am I even ready to pull out into traffic? Are you even ready to pull out into traffic until you do any of these things up here? Are you even ready?
No, until you do those.
No, you are not ready to pull out into traffic until you do these things up here. So I would personally not start checking for traffic until I've done these 5 things. After I've done these 5 things, then I would, oh, actually 6 things. After I've done those 6 things, now I'm ready to pull out in the traffic. My car is on. I know my car is on because I started it. I know I have enough space to pull out. My signal is on. My car's in drive. My wheel is already turned enough to come out of the spot. Not until I've done those 6 things will I even worry about if there's any traffic coming. Now I'm ready to come out. All right. Now, this example that I gave you, the reason I go over this example as far as starting a car is because I've seen people go through this whole process right here, and they get to the point where they take their foot off the brake, they check for traffic, they check their foot off the brake, and then the car does not move. If the car does not move, oh, that's what I'll tell you to do then. What if you do this, all this stuff, right, that we went through, and let's say the reason why we figured out that the reason a car is not starting is because it was what? We didn't do what? You never started the car, right? This is a typical mistake that people make on the road test. So to start the car, we would put our foot on the brake, we would turn the key to start the car. But let's say you do that, and the car does not start. So let's say you figured out that you didn't start the car. So you put your foot on the brake. Oh, let me go over that. How do you start a car? Really simple. How do you start it? Anybody? What do you have to do to start a car?
Right. Oh, you know what? Thank you for saying that. Because I didn't know what was going on with my eyes. Or forgot about my allergy.
We just put the key in and we turn.
Okay, so you turn the key. You turn the key clockwise or counterclockwise? So you turn the key. Most cars are going to turn the key clockwise to turn the key to hear it. How do you know the car's on? Do you hear it? Do you feel it?
You feel it. Both.
Now, some cars are very quiet.
I
Check your dashboard to see if it's in,
See if the warning lights did what? Another thing that you could do is to make sure the car's on is make sure the car's in park, and then maybe you could press the gas. If you press the gas and you see the gauge go up or you hear the gas, that means what? The car's on.
car's on.
Ideally, you shouldn't have to do this. The reason why I say this is make sure before you get to your road test that you, or at least when you're on the line for the test, that you have turned the car, that particular car that you're taking for the road test, make sure you at least one time you have turned it off and turned it back on again. So that way you know how that car feels and sounds and behaves once you start it. All right. So that's it now. And that's something that you should do, because I've seen a lot of people get into a situation here where they're taking the test and right when they get ready to move off, the car does not move. If you find yourself in that situation, if somebody finds themselves in that situation, do you think it would be easy for them to figure out what they did wrong, or not so easy?
I was full on fighting.
All right, let's say you figured out that the car is not on, and then you go to turn the key.
Wow.
All right, let's say you go to turn the key to start the car and the car does not start. Why? So let's say you already went through the process. You check your emergency brake, you check the gas gauge, you check the battery, and then you figured out, oh, you never started the car. So now you start the car, you put your foot on the brake, you turn the key to start it, and the car does not start. What could cause a car to not start here? It's not the gate, it's not the emergency brake, there's gas in the car, it's not the battery. What else could cause a car not to start? Could the alarm be, could the car having an alarm, could that cause it not to start? It could be that, but most likely it's something that you probably would not think of. If you forgot to start the car in the beginning and you started to pull out of the parking spot, that means you already put the car in what gear?
Right.
You already put the car in drive. Can a car start if it's in drive?
No.
Is that common knowledge?
No.
A car will only start if it's in what gear? The vehicle will only start if it's in what gear?
Park.
Or what?
Or neutral.
or neutral.
Okay, a vehicle will only start if it's in park or neutral. Is that common knowledge?
No,
You think the average person would know that?
No.
really not.
The average person would not know that or realize that about a car. You only know that. If you know that, you only know it because it probably this scenario probably happened to you before, where you went to try to start the car or move the car wouldn't move, and you tried to turn the key and the car would not start. And you only realize it after looking down and seeing that the car's in drive and maybe guessing that, oh, maybe I have to put the car in park and then turning the key again to see if it starts. But you probably, for a few moments, you probably thought something was wrong with the vehicle. All right. This scenario, I've seen it play out a lot at the road test sites. All right. And it's usually caused, what do you think usually causes this scenario? What do you think causes a student to be in this scenario on their road test?
Nervous.
It could be nervousness. It could be caused by nervousness. It could be caused by not knowing the vehicle. For example, I've seen people not turn the key all the way. They turn the key. See people turn the key, but they don't turn it all the way to start the car. Or I've seen them turn the key too much. Seen them turn the key and then turn it right back on. All in one motion. So these are all typical mistakes that I've seen people make. And it's caused by, it can be caused by nervousness or a combination of nervousness and not knowing the vehicle. But the typical reason is this: when people take their driving lessons,
that toxic baby father drama. I ain't got time for that. You ain't got no business.
when people take their driving lessons, is the car usually on or off when they get in? Is it off?
It's usually on.
Yeah, when you usually take your driving lessons, usually somebody else was already in the vehicle, right? And they got out,
Right.
They go sit in the back seat. And when you get in the car is usually already on.
Mm-hmm.
So that means every time you get in the car, you never really got in a habit of doing what?
Starting the car.
Is starting a car difficult?
No.
No, it's pretty easy. But if somebody never started a car before, could you see them getting into this scenario that I just described?
Yes.
Yes, very easily. Okay. All right. Does anybody want to find themselves in this scenario on a road test?
No.
No. If you find yourself in this situation on your road test, what do you think the examiner is thinking sitting next to you as you try to figure out what's going on with the car?
You don't know what you're doing.
Right. He's going to be thinking, you don't know what you're doing. And he's not going to be, he or she is not going to be very confident with your ability to take the test, to do the test. Although they have seen it so many times, they're so used to it that, you know, they probably, as long as you can figure it out, it probably won't be a big deal for them. All right, because they've seen it so many times. If I had to guess, I would say 1 out of 3 people probably have experienced some form of issue starting a car when they're taking a test. All right, and it's usually caused because they don't have a lot of experience starting a car, and the car is usually always on when they take their lessons, and they never got in the habit of doing it. It's not a very difficult thing. All you need to do is just do it once or twice, and then you know it. All right. So it's not a very difficult thing. But when you've never done it before and you're nervous, it could be something that could throw you off at the beginning of the test. And you don't want to be thrown off at the beginning of the test because you're going to be feeling nervous. And could this type of scenario fail you at the beginning of the test before you even get to do anything? It could fail you if you don't figure it out. And once you start the test, your examiner can't help you. Sometimes they do. Quite often, I see them help people figure this out, but they don't have to. And your instructor can't help you because you've already started the test. If your instructor helps you and tells you what you're doing wrong, then technically the examiner can fail you because you've already started the test and you needed help from somebody else to figure out what was going on with the vehicle. All right, so to avoid all of this, the next time you take your driving lesson and you get in a car, if the car's already on, you should ask to do what?
Start the car.
Right. You should ask to turn it off, turn it back on again. Okay. So you do it a couple of times. All right. Let's see here. Okay. I am streaming this on YouTube, but I'm going to stop the YouTube thing now. Now, how do I stop that? How do I stop it? Oh yeah, here we go.